everybody. Welcome back to the Smorgasboard review of Wandavision. This is episode 6, titled All New Halloween Spooktacular. A Halloween special episode, a Halloween Spooktacular episode in February. So, for all of you Halloween lovers, there you go. Something to look forward to. So, we're going to get right into it and just kind of give the brief overview of the episode. We start off with a very 90s feel, a Malcolm in the Middle theme opening, which I think was pretty much adored by everyone in the watch party when we were watching this. So, our episode starts off with our twin boys, Tommy and Billy, doing the usual child shenanigan things, walking around, calling each other dorks, and making fun of each other's Halloween costumes and all that good stuff. And we get introduced to Uncle Pietro from the last episode that showed up right at the very end, and he is, of course, doing the bum uncle thing and sleeping in till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then after we get a little bit of back and forth with the kids and their uncle, Wanda and Vision come in, and unfortunately, it seems that things are not as wonderful in Westview as they have been previously. We get a little bit of contention between Wanda and Vision. Clearly, Vision's, he's become fully aware, at least to some extent, of kind of the world that's around him now. He's not looking at everything with like rose-colored shaders anymore. He's very skeptical of everything that's around him and everything that Wanda's doing. So he tells Wanda that, oh, I can't go trick-or-treating with the boys tonight on Halloween because I have city watch duties to take care of. And she's very confused. She doesn't understand. He's being very like adversarial with her. And who comes to the rescue other than good old Uncle Pietro, who says, don't worry, the kids need a father figure. I'll take care of it. We'll go trick-or-treating with them. Everything will be fine. The episode then jumps back to the real world, and we're starting to see the repercussions of Sword attempting to assassinate Wanda with their 80s technology drone. Captain Rambo and the director of Sword get into a big fight with each other, which inevitably leads to her, Darcy, and Jimmy getting kicked off the base, essentially. But before that can happen, Jimmy Woo comes in with the hard right hook onto one of the Sword guards, which is probably my favorite part of this whole episode. and he and Rambo take out the guards. They steal their they steal their clothes, like their cloaks and everything, to better disguise themselves so they can still walk around the base. And they're going to try and figure out, well, what is it that the Sword director is keeping from us, and why does he want us out of this like investigation and off of this base? So they're snooping around the Sword base, and we jump right back to Halloween in Westview, and we find out that Vision isn't actually doing City Watch stuff. So Wanda has a conversation with her neighbor Herb, and he tells her, no, Vision's not on duty tonight. He's not doing anything City Watch related. So then we pop back over to Vision, and Vision is getting a better idea of what is actually going on in the town. The further he gets away from Wanda, the more he's starting to notice that things aren't really what they seem. So there's a lot of it almost looks like a computer glitch. There are like people just standing around, not doing anything. There's a woman who's trying to like hang something up on like a clothesline, but she kind of keeps making the same repetitive motion and never actually hooks anything. And you kind of see like a single tear like roll down from her eye. And so Vision's starting to get a better idea of what's going on in the town. And right when we're getting into the juicy stuff, we get another one of the infomercials from this series that this one takes kind of a hard left turn, because instead of kind of featuring the same cast and kind of like obvious product placement that references other Marvel stuff, we get like a very 90s claymation kind of like yogurt commercial for a product called Yo Magic, which pretty heavily handedly, your magic is what you need to survive and all that good stuff. So we get through the infomercial, we jump back to Westview. Wanda and Pietro are having a conversation about, the kids and where he's been and what's going on. And we come to find out that one of the boys has unlocked his powers and is a speedster just like his uncle. So he's zooming around, stealing candy, doing all kinds of shenanigans. So we're starting to uncover that the kids actually have powers, or at least one of them does. So big revelation, going back to the real world where our agents are snooping around and they find out that the director is actually able to track Vision somehow. And as they're watching Vision, they're noticing that he's making kind of a break for the edge of town. And then we jump back into Westview. A lot of back and forth in this episode so far, jumping between the real world and what's inside of Westview. So we get back inside of Westview. Vision is seeing more and more of people just stagnant, not moving around. And then he runs into Agnes, who's sitting in her car, and she's just kind of like absolutely like blank stare. She's just like looking off into the distance, not really saying anything. And then Vision kind of like breaks her out of like the illusion, kind of like what he did with his coworker in last week's episode. And she just kind of starts like freaking out and spilling her guts. And she recognizes Vision and says, "Hey, I know you. You're an Avenger." And he says, "That's great. What's an Avenger?" So like Vision's mind has been completely wiped, and Agnes just kind of starts going like off the deep end. She's like cackling maniacally and going nuts. So Vision does what he thinks is the right thing and kind of puts her back into the illusion. She drives off, and then Vision makes a full-on break for the edge of town. So we pop back over to Wanda and Pietro. They're having a nice little heart-to-heart where they kind of start unraveling that Wanda apparently didn't consciously bring Pietro, but Pietro came to her aid because like the world around her was starting to fall apart and she needed something to kind of bring it all back together. And Pietro starts kind of revealing things to Wanda, like, kind of letting her know that, hey, I know this world isn't real. I know you're the one who's making it, and I know everything that went on like outside of this little bubble that you created, and I know that in real life I'm dead and your husband's dead, and all of this like pretty heavy stuff. So we jump back, and Vision is making a full-on break through the barrier out of Westview. He starts making his way through, and you can tell that it's literally tearing him to pieces as he's trying to get through. He's like in great agony and trying to like claw his way out, and all of the sword agents are kind of surrounding and observing what's happening. And then we find out that Wanda's other son, his powers kind of manifest, and it shows that he's kind of got a psychic magical ability similar to that of Wanda. So he's able to figure out, okay, something's going on with Dad. He's in pain. And Wanda just kind of goes like fully nuclear and starts expanding the barrier to try and get Vision back inside of it. And as she does that, the barrier starts taking over everyone on the sword base. People are trying to escape. And I think ultimately the only people that really get out of the blast zone are Jimmy, Captain Rambo, and then I think the sword director and a couple other people. And then the episode pretty much comes to an abrupt end with Wanda just kind of like ceasing the expansion of the orb, and then we just hard cut to the credits. So gosh, a lot of stuff happened in this episode, and just trying to recap it all from the jumps between all of the different character storylines going on right now is just about enough to give you a headache. So I'm going to stop talking for a second and let somebody else give their opinion on just how nuts this episode was.
Yeah, a lot happened. I don't know even where to begin. I'll start with the twins. It was really cool seeing that they kept the powers from the comics, it appears. You know, the one gets Quicksilver's powers, the other one gets more Wanda's powers. And I think it was Julia pointed out, I figured Tommy, who got the speedster powers, his his Halloween costume was after Quicksilver, so it was like, okay, that's cool. But Julia pointed out that Billy's is his comic book costume esque,
Oh, really?
right? Wiccan. So that's kind of what Wiccan looks like in the comics, which I didn't know them from the comics. I didn't read any of those comics, but that was cool. She pointed that out.
Yeah, kind of in line with that, the Halloween costumes that everybody picked kind of reflected their actual like costumes from the origins of their comics, like from way back in the day when they first debuted. So Vision, Wanda, Pietro, and the boys apparently all have like these old school kind of like 90s style shambled together Halloween costumes that look exactly like their actual like real life costumes, which I thought was funny because Wanda says that her costume is like a Sokovian like
Fortune
Fortune
teller.
teller.
fortune
Yeah.
teller, and Vision says that like his costume is like a luchador costume, but the being the wrestling nerd that I am, Vision's entire face is exposed, and like everything else is very close, like very very close to being like luchador style. But just the fact that the only thing he has on his face is like the fake like Infinity Stone on his forehead, and then the rest of his face is completely exposed. It's like
Yeah.
that's not really what a luchador looks like, but their whole deal is like keeping their face concealed. But I got a nice little chuckle out of it, and it's cool that they use the kids' costumes as well. So kind of these little nods are always appreciated.
Yes. Oh yeah. So then
Yeah,
Quicksilver. Man, like what is up with Quicksilver? Like when he first came in, I'm like, okay, well, they're pulling him straight out of the X-Men universe. Now, I don't even know if that's Quicksilver. The way he
yeah,
remembers
Yeah.
what Pietro went through, but it's Evan Peters, so he doesn't have any memories from being X-Men Quicksilver. But then it makes me think, is this someone entirely different because Wanda didn't pull him in or didn't consciously pull him in? So it's like, he remembers things before he got pulled in and everything. It's like, I don't know.
yeah, because
I don't
it's
know.
like, and Wanda even tries to quiz him a few
Yeah.
times, like because even Wanda's confused. Like she knew that it was Pietro, but it's not like something's not right about
Yeah.
this Pietro, and she was like questioning him about their childhood, and trying to get like information. And he does. It's funny because he kind of ignores like the first couple attempts, but then he even brings up getting killed in Age of
Yes.
Ultron. Like, so he even kind of like opens the door to that and tells her, like, listen, the last thing I remember is getting shot to pieces by Ultron, and like next thing I know, I'm at your front door, and
And
it's like,
and
yeah, go ahead.
Wanda had for a split second saw him with his shot up corpse. Like
Yeah,
she had that moment where she saw Vision with the Infinity Stone ripped out of his head. So it's
yeah,
like, is that just his body she's manipulating? Like Vision? Did she bring him back and it's still his original body? So
yeah. But then the question furthers by like, they still haven't explained why he looks different.
right.
Yeah.
Because they've made it very clear that this just isn't, and I think it's really cool that it's not just a simple recasting. Like a lot of TV shows and movies. Marvel even. They recast uh, Rhodey,
Mm-hmm.
and they just rolled with it. When Don Cheadle took over the role, they were just like from I believe it was Terrence Howard
Yep.
was the original Rhodey in the first Iron Man movie. When they replaced him with Don Cheadle, they just kind of rolled with it. Like, they were just like, no, it's just a recasting. We're just going to keep the ball rolling. It's fine, whatever. But, they're out of the gate. They were like, Darcy says that she recast Pietro. Like, what's going on? So, it's very confusing that like they're still not explaining why he looks different. And I don't think he didn't even give like a reason. He's like, listen, I don't know why any of this is the way that it is, but he's like, I heard you calling out and you needed help, so here I am. And it's just like, what? Like, it kind of furthers the conspiracy that something bigger has got to be going on, like behind the scenes. Like, there's got to be someone who's doing this, because it just can't, like, with Wanda being that surprised about things that are happening now, like, it's hard to believe that it's just her.
Yeah.
And then, do you guys recall whenever Wanda and Pietro was like kind of like, well, Wanda was more quizzing Pietro about their childhood, and he recalls something. Then Wanda's like, "That's not how I remembered it."
Yeah.
Right.
So it kind of poses the question that he may be Pietro, but he may be a different version or a different or like a different multiverse dimension of Pietro. He still could have died the same way.
Right.
Yeah. I think you're thinking of the part where they were talking about trick or treating,
Hmm.
and Pietro was like, "Yeah, I remember in a flashback to them getting the fish,
Yeah.
as like instead of candy." And she's like, "Well, I don't remember it that way." He's like, "Oh, you probably suppressed it, your traumatized memory or whatever. You probably suppressed it," which just plays off this whole thing of Wanda going through so much trauma in her life and suppressing so much of it.
Yeah, it's really nuts because it was cool to see as much of Pietro that we did in this episode, because I was kind of worried that maybe they would just kind of like gloss over it a little bit, because sometimes when they do things like this, it becomes like little cameos instead of like being directly woven into a story.
Yeah.
And I was worried about that being a thing. But I mean, they really just threw Evan Peters like right into the middle of like all of this. Like Pietro was like a foundational part of this episode, because it's funny, he's almost like in a way teaching the kids how to use their powers. Like he's kind of encouraging them to like just like flex their muscles and go, because while Wanda's having her conversation with like Herb about Vision and like, well, where is he actually, like, what's he off doing, you can see like Pietro and the twins in the background. They're like super speeding around the neighborhood, like stealing candy and like like spraying everybody with silly string and like busting up jack-o'-lanterns. Like they're just going nuts. So like, I mean, Pietro he's kind of like wearing a bunch of different hats here, because he's kind of like teaching the boys that it's okay to use your powers however you want to use them. And then he's kind of like the shock of reality for Wanda, because every time they kind of have a heart to heart, he kind of reveals to her a little bit more that like he knows what's going on. He knows everything that she's doing. And he's almost like telling her like, hey, it's okay that you're doing this. Like, if you want to make a world for you and your family, you should be able to do that. If you want to control all these people, you can do that. He was almost like impressed that she even had the capability to control this entire town.
I'm
Like,
pretty sure he said he was impressed
yeah,
that she was doing it. So
yeah, because I think he even asked her questions about it, like, how are you doing that?
Yeah.
Like, how are you like, like controlling all of these people? And I think Pietro even at one point brings up like, oh, by the way, like solid move, bringing out the kids.
yeah,
Like
where'd you have them this whole time?
Yeah, so and the fact that he even said like this whole time, like, like where, like, you just brought them out because, Vision was getting suspicious about there being like no kids in the neighborhood, and it would have been weird for the twins to be the only kids on Halloween, like around the town, which like furthers this idea that, Wanda really is like that powerful to like keep all of these kids in like a stasis state while she's like running around the adults, which could explain why Vision kind of was like so easily able to escape Wanda in a way, because now she's like controlling, like, I think it's probably feasible to say that she's now controlling like twice as many or like 3 times as many people now that she's pulled the kids, out of whatever like stasis they were in, and now has them like running around and trick-or-treating. And now she has to like all these like other chess pieces that she has to keep control of, because like Wanda was really in a bit of a fog in this like entire episode. Like this is like the first time that we've seen Wanda kind of not be in control fully. She's had such a tight grip on everything so far. This is very odd to see her like not being able to control everything and make everything as perfect as she has like in the past.
I thought it was interesting that she couldn't tell Vision was trying to escape, but yet
Right.
Billy could. He had that connection. And I didn't know if that was because Wanda had so much going on, it was just kind of straining her, or if Billy's powers are that much stronger, or he's just got that strong of a connection to his dad. I don't know which it is. But I thought it was interesting that he was able to, realize he was in trouble.
Yeah, he like picked up on it, and then when he told Wanda about it, and like Wanda kind of coached him through like focusing his powers and really like narrowing in on just where Vision was. Because even up to
Mhm.
that point, she still didn't see Vision. Like, she didn't know
Yeah.
where
Right.
Vision was. And then when Billy was like, I see people with guns, then she immediately, like, knew where he was and then just decided to, like, push, like, her, I don't know, the hex
borders.
or whatever. Yeah. Just push that out, like, even further and started, like, encapsulating not just the sword base, but she was going out further, taking over, like, there was, like, a diner, I think, like a gas station, and, like, a bunch of, like, smaller little, like, township-looking places that she just kind of, like, went ahead and sucked that up, too. So now that's even more people and more property and more territory that she has to control. So I mean, I have a feeling Wanda is gonna, like, we've kind of seen her mental state, like, slowly breaking down as the show has gone
Mhm.
on. I'm expecting, like, next week's episode, if not, like, out of the gate, definitely near the end, for Wanda to just kind of, like, snap completely and just go nuts, because she's on a fast track to just, like, losing her sanity with trying to keep everybody, like, inside of Westview and keep Sword out and, juggling all of these things that are going on.
Mhm.
So whoever's, behind the scenes, they gotta just be, like, this close to kind of, like, coming out and taking credit, because I don't know how much further you can go without answering some of, like, the hard-hitting questions, like, how is Pietro here?
Yeah.
How does Wanda have this much power now? There's a lot of stuff that kind of needs answers, and it's going to need it soon, because there's only 3 episodes left.
Right.
Also, I just want to point this out, kind of as like a fun thing. Evan Peters and the actor of Pietro.
Yeah.
They were both in the film Kick-Ass together.
Yeah.
And like Evan Peters, Quicksilver even like Mitch is like, oh man, that's Kick-Ass, and all the kids are like, yeah.
And I think Wanda even like goes like a kick-ass? Like, what is?
Yeah.
Like, she just kind of has this moment of, like, she's like, what's that mean? And it's like, like, that's for us. That's not for you. Don't worry about it.
but anyway, did you guys catch where Pietro started saying some more like things that pointed more towards a little bit more leaning towards Mephisto? I think that one line he said, like, oh, this town is charming as hell. And
Oh, yeah.
then another time he was talking to the kids, and I think he called them little spawns of the devil, or little devil spawns, while while they were at first out trick-or-treating.
So really, like, heavy-handedly dropping the, like, all of this is demonic.
Yeah.
Like, because didn't we mention last week during the like poolside meeting a couple episodes back, somebody says like, oh, the devil's in the details.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
apparently they've been, like, sprinkling in, like, these little references throughout the show, which really didn't, like, mean anything up until now that, everybody's really kind of...
more and more, and
Yeah. Because, like, something that's said in the first episode might not mean a whole lot, but then, like, when they keep kind of, like, sewing that in throughout the entire show, then it starts becoming like, oh, okay, there's something to all of these, like, all of the words they're choosing, like devils in the details and, like, demon spawn or whatever he calls the kids. Yeah, it seems like more and more, like, Mephisto is going to be, like, or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Is it Mephisto or Mephisto?
I'm not 100% sure how to say it.
The devil.
Yeah. Satan.
Satan from the Marvel Universe is on his way to Westview, New Jersey, it would appear.
So
I've seen some people... Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just gonna say, like, so going with Chris's theory that the mailman could have been him, do you think
Still
this
is.
is his? I'm getting on board with you, Chris, because we had some slow nights at work and we were watching Wandavision. We caught back up, and there was 2 or 3 parts that caught my eye looking at it from the lens that it could be him. The very first episode, in the intro, you see the mailman. And then in episode 2, Agnes says something kind of catty towards the mailman, and they have like a weird kind of look at each other. And you don't notice it unless you're going back and looking for that. And I noticed that, and then Agnes, at the pool party, like Julia said, when they said the devil's in the details, she leaned over to Wanda and was like, that's not the only place he is. And it's like, So, going with Chris's theory, I think that the mailman could have been him, and now this could be his way in to the family through Pietro. I'm wondering if he's the one who's making it look like he's Pietro and stuff, and that's his way to get to the kids, because he's connecting to the kids.
Right.
Yeah, because we haven't seen the mailman since Pietro came in, have we?
Exactly.
We haven't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I haven't combed through this episode. You know, he may be somewhere in one of these scenes because I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this episode, so he might be in here somewhere. I don't know. I don't know that for certain, but
I've got the episode.
It's
pulled
the
out.
mailman. I swear.
I'm like combing through it right now just to like see if like the mailman so if you could see the mailman in the background and he's wearing like one of the old school like devil costumes, like red, like red skin tie, like horns, he's got the little poker and he's got like a red cape like with a high collar. If anybody finds that in this episode, like it's pretty much confirmed, right? Like
myth confirmed.
like that's hitting you over the head pretty heavy with like it's the mailman. I've seen people say that it could be like Agnes's husband, Ralph, since you never like see him, and like Agnes is always talking about him, and she's always just like, "Oh, that Ralph, he's a lazy slob." Like, I don't know. I've seen people talk about that, but I'm fully with Chris. I hope it's the mailman. If it's not the mailman, I'll be very disappointed.
Do we know the actor of the mailman? Because I can look up the cast.
Are we sure that his name isn't Ralph and that's Agnes's husband?
I kind of wondered what if the mailman is Ralph.
That's why she was giving him like looks and like winks and finger guns and stuff. She's like, yeah, that's my man right there. My mailman. Oh gosh.
Getting on to another theory that I brought up in the previous episode that I'm also excited to see if it pans out is that in the real world, with Jimmy Woo and the others, whenever they're going through the files trying to like figure out what all the director had on the inside and whatnot and all the secrets, what's her name? I can't think of names right now.
Darcy or Monica.
Monica gets back on her phone and she's like, my guy is here with my way in. So she gets back on her phone after she had been texting on the previous episode about an aerospace engineer. So it's pointing again to that hopefully we get Reed Richards coming in the Fantastic Four getting established.
Yes.
So in this next episode, if she goes... Because her and Jimmy Woo were on their way to meet this guy whenever the barriers start expanding. Yeah. So hopefully the next episode starts off with them meeting a like pre-Fantastic Four Reed Richards.
That would be pretty. I almost said that would be pretty fantastic.
I don't know if you guys watched the TikTok I sent you on this.
I haven't yet.
I sent it this morning, and basically the guy went over. So we had the like 90s Malcolm in the Middle kind of thing this week. Next week would be 2000s if we get another jump. Mm-hmm. And who does everybody want to play Reed Richards?
John Krasinski.
Yes. In what time period does The Office take
place?
No, not an Office. I know everybody loves The Office.
I don't even want an Office one.
I hate The Office, but that's what this guy was talking about in the TikTok. I'll have to.
If it's John Krasinski, oh,
but yeah. So like, there's like, it's early 2000s. That's when The Office came out, and then if John Krasinski, we're supposed to be getting a star-studded or like a star cameo, like at some point in this show. Like Elizabeth Olsen already has said that. Like there's still a big cameo to come out that we haven't seen yet. We didn't see it in this week, so
it's gonna be Luke Skywalker calling it now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and
Open the real
Mark
multiverse.
And
Is
back to the
great.
mailman. According to IMDb, the mailman is called Dennis the mailman.
Okay.
No,
Oh,
Dennis the
right.
Menace.
Get out of
Um,
here, Josh.
It shows that he's only in 3 of the 9 episodes.
So yeah, that would be.
Okay.
So, and he was in the first 3.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that he doesn't change to somebody else.
Right.
I'm still in the camp that it's the mailman. Like
Yeah.
Chris did a fantastic job of convincing me that it's going to be the mailman.
He
So-
doesn't make any sense for him to be in those scenes. Otherwise, you could take him out of those scenes and it would be the same. But you add him in there, and it's like, why is the mailman here?
So just to play devil's advocate, since that's the theme of this, yeah, thank you. Be here all week. But like when you think about these old school like sitcoms and these shows, and the mailman walking on the sidewalk is a pretty big trope. Like that's kind of like classic Americana right there. Like when you think of stuff like Leave It to Beaver or like the Brady Bunch or whatever. If you see him out, like you always see that it's like the same mailman every time, right? Like the blue shorts, the like teal button up short sleeve, the white shirt underneath. He's got like a hat on. He's always pushing the cart, and he's super friendly all the time. Like that's kind of like indicative of these kind of era sitcoms. So it wouldn't surprise me that he's just in there to like further the the narrative that like this is a sitcom. But I do agree with you. It's like for a universe such as like the MCU, where it's like every little thing like has meaning and significance to it, whether it's like the creative team that puts it on there, or if it's like fan theories that just like pour in, like everything has like a little bit of significance, and everything has its time to shine. So I would not be too surprised at all if the mailman does turn out to be like the bad guy.
If it turns out that he has no like role or significance whatsoever, except for just being a trope in the the sitcom kind of style thing, I'm going to be highly disappointed.
Yeah, it'll be a bummer, but it is what it is. We'll keep our hopes high that it is in fact the bad guy himself. So we've talked a lot about what's kind of going on inside of Westview. So and we're touching now on a little bit of the stuff that's going on outside of it, with like the potential for Reed Richards and all this like good stuff. So one thing that I would like to point out that I kind of saw in a TikTok as well. TikTok is a great source of information and garbage. So, sift through it at your own risk. But, it makes you wonder why the director of Sword is so gung-ho to like eliminate Wanda, essentially. Because when we jump back to like the Sword base, and Monica Rambeau is really like tearing into the director about like why he's like essentially trying to start World War III with one of the strongest like entities on the planet. He really doesn't seem to have too great of a reason why he's doing what he's doing. He's just kind of like, like, oh well, she's the enemy, so we have to attack her no matter what. And Monica's trying to tell him, like, listen, she's too powerful. Like, you just can't go in there and shoot her. Like, it's not going to work that way.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to de-escalate this, she has to be the one to de-escalate it. Like, you just can't, go in guns blazing. You've tried that several times already, and it's failed every time. And that kind of leads to Jimmy and Monica and Darcy essentially getting thrown out. And I saw a TikTok where somebody said that, I saw two separate ones. So the first one was this guy basically said, in, I think it was maybe the Avengers Assemble like cartoon show, or if it happened in the comics, it was one of the two, I'm not sure which. But basically Ultron like disguised himself as a government agent to try and like destroy the Avengers, essentially, like, and sneak in and destroy the Avengers. And people were like, maybe it's the sword director. Now, in terms of theories, this one is a stretch, to say the least, you know, like, because there's no evidence that supports in any way that Ultron is actually still alive in any capacity, because as far as we know, Vision pretty much, like, wiped him out. But somebody was like, well, why else would the sword director want to, like, be able to track Vision and know his, like, every, you know, move and every location? Because Vision's body was originally supposed to be Ultron's body. Like, that was the whole reason why it was created. Like, Ultron created Vision's body because he needed, like, a perfect body for his, like, perfect mind, or whatever his explanation was for it. So, but then the Avengers ended up stealing it, and then with the mind gem and with, like, Thor's power, they were able to, like, resurrect Jarvis in the form of Vision. So there was that. But, you know, people are like, oh, well, maybe he's tracking him because maybe that's why Sword wanted the body, because maybe Ultron exists in some capacity and he's trying to, like, work his way back into, like, becoming all powerful again. And what better way to do that than to steal the body of the guy that killed you and also get a little bit of revenge on the person who betrayed you, aka Wanda, you know? So, Julia, you have a question?
I have a statement.
Okay.
Have you ever Googled Wandavision cast?
That was going to be my next point.
Okay, go.
So there was another TikTok that, as Julia just said, they Googled the cast listing for WandaVision, and James Spader is listed as the voice of Ultron. Now, after last week's episode, it did show a part of Age of Ultron when the universe's original Pietro kind of got shot up, you know, near the end of the second Avengers movie. So, you know, they could be crediting James Spader because of something like that. Like, there could be another one of those clips where you hear Ultron's voice and they just had to, like, you know, they had to credit James Spader for that role. Maybe that's what it was. But it kind of furthers the conspiracy that, you know, maybe Ultron's still out there somehow. I mean, because when you think about it, he was connected to, like, the internet. Like, he was basically connected to the grid, and, like, Vision supposedly, like, rooted him out of the, like, the entire, like, internet and the network and the grid and all that good stuff. And Ultron even says as much. But, like, why would you, you know, I don't know, there's little things like why would you say that? Like, why would you just be like, you cut me off, like, I don't exist in the internet anymore? Like, that seems like a very, like, exact thing to say to your enemy, kind of like, you know, when bad guys, like, monologue their whole plans to the good guys. It's like Ultron would have been too smart for that. Like, why would he just be like, you cut me off from everything, now I can't jump around, or, like, whatever, you know? So maybe he is, like, still exists in some capacity, some way. But I think, you know, that's just another fun little possible conspiracy theory to throw on the fire of WandaVision thus far. I think it would be really cool, but then the question becomes, when is it too much?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Ultron, of all of the Avenger villains, Ultron was the one that kept coming back. He came back like 3, 4, 5 times from different dimensions and stuff. So, I mean...
And I will never turn away more James Spader.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, Age of Ultron as a movie wasn't the best Marvel movie, but, you know, I really enjoyed James Spader as Ultron, and, you know, I'm not opposed to more Ultron in the future. It would just kind of be, this would be a very weird way of doing it, if there's, like, because I get the connection to Wanda and Vision, like the close connection that Ultron has to those two, but it does feel like a lot whenever you know, weigh all of the other, you know, storylines and possible, like, introductions and stuff. You know, like, it, I guess it kind of makes sense in one way. I'm really, like, torn by this, you know, because it's like, in one sense, this is the first official step into the next phase. So why wouldn't they want to introduce and get a lot of, like, storylines moving out the gate, you know? But at the same time, it's like, is this is this kind of like sensory overload, or maybe is it because it's in a long form instead of just like a 2-hour movie?
Right.
It makes a little bit more sense, and it's a lot easier to make it more coherent instead of just dropping all of this information on top of you in the span of like 2.5 hours.
Right. All right, it's time for Josh's theory then.
Uh-oh.
So I've got another one. So we now know that Disney owns X-Men. Obviously, they pulled in Evan Peters. So they've already bridged that gap, whether this is Quicksilver from X-Men or not. They've bridged the gap by bringing in Evan Peters, in my eyes. That is a definite possibility we can have mutants in this universe going forward here soon then. So House of M, a lot of people think this WandaVision pulls a lot of a lot of things from. Where in the comic House of M, Wanda pretty much created an illusion, an alternate reality and everything. And then in the end, I think, or during that comic, wiped out all the mutants. Like, there was no mutants left during that comic arc. Well, there's some people online that think this is the reverse. Wanda's created this little reality and everything, and that this is how Disney is going to introduce mutants into their universe. Whether it is pulling in X-Men characters and keeping the same cast members, or creating a new, timeline of mutants, and this is how they do it. And if you guys noticed, they talked about Monica's blood tests and results and stuff, and they said that she had went through twice, in and then out, and that had rewritten her at a molecular level twice now, and that she was fundamentally different. So I'm wondering if at the end of this all, anyone that got pulled in possibly could have a mutation, or when this is all said and done, if the reality, I'm going to call it, the Hex, if the Hex disperses and goes around the planet or something, goes worldwide, boom, are some of these people going to have mutations from this? So that's my theory, is this could be a very solid way of introducing mutants into this MCU universe. But then again, is it too much? Like you said, there's a lot going on here. Are they really going to do... They can't do all of these, I don't think. Or if they do, that would be really ballsy. But
I mean, yeah, it would be nuts to, go at it in that way. But like I said earlier, there's just so many questions that still need to be answered. Like, who this Pietro actually is. Like, I feel like the key to all of this kind of lies with, like, Pietro. Like, who are you? Where are you from? In what capacity are you, like, alive? How are you here? Like, once the kind of the Pietro question is answered, I feel like it'll kind of help with that, because we know for a fact that Monica's DNA was rewritten. Because, like, they kind of hinted at that at first when her clothes were kind of, like, molecularly changed. But at least I didn't think anything about her as a person. I thought, okay,
right.
Wanda just changed her clothes to match, like, the time period. But now it turns out she's changing the people, on a molecular level. So now you have everybody that was inside of the town of Westview, and now she's pushed the Hex out further and is encapsulating more people. So now the question becomes, like, is she ripping a hole in reality where she's pulling actual mutants out of it, like Pietro from the X-Men universe, or is she creating new ones by, rewriting their DNA through the Hex? Or is it both?
Right.
We don't know. And it feels like it's got to be one or the other, because doing both seems crazy, right? It's like you have natural born mutants that you're pulling out of one universe, and then mutants that you create in the universe that you have. And it's like, now you have two, like, technically separate factions of mutants. Like, my mind is on fire with, like, what's could be, or, like, what will be with, how they do this moving forward. So it's bizarre. It's a lot of balls in the air for Marvel to try and, like, juggle all at once.
Yeah.
I would say I'll give credit to Julia for last week. She said that whenever we saw that Monica's blood test and X-rays came back blank, she said, "Could this be Monica getting superpowers?" So
You're
credit
welcome.
there.
Thank you.
But yeah, I think like Josh said, at the end of the House of M, Wanda pretty much envelops the whole planet / reality with her powers, and we see in this episode she's easily able to just rapidly expand her border. So if something, and that was over her, like, possibly losing Vision, Vision getting outside and dying. And I believe House of M, like, the big thing about it was she had these children. She had her children that everybody said was imaginary, and then people trying to take her children from her, whether it was Shield or whether it was Mephisto or whatever. But I believe in House of M, they tried to take her kids away from her. So if that happens in this show and she thinks she's losing her kids,
Boom.
she could just go off, like Parker said in one of these episodes. I think she's just going to snap from something, and something like that could, like, say, like, Evan Peters or Quicksilver is Mephisto, and then he takes the kids that he's earned their trust from, and then she snaps and just envelops all of reality. Just expands her border massively, and then creates mutants and opens a hole in the multiverse while she's at it.
Yeah, there's like 1,000 different directions it feels like that this show could take over the next 3 episodes. And I think I read something today that said that the last 3 episodes of WandaVision are each going to be an hour long.
I read
Thank God.
So
an hour and 7 minutes long.
I was about to say, yeah. So here's the question: is it an hour long in the sense that, like, the entire, like, show, like the entire episode is going to be an hour, including show and credits, or, as we all know, like, the 7-minute long credit runtime, is that going to be tacked on to the end of that hour? Ultimately, it probably doesn't matter. But, this show does have, this is kind of going off topic a little bit, but this show does have ridiculously long credits. But I kind of understand why they have the long credits, because, I mean, like, when you think about the amount of people that worked on, like, the movies, and we're getting what I would consider, like, movie quality, TV, it's like, it's no wonder that it's going to take 7 minutes to run through the credits of everybody that's, like, worked on this stuff, So it's like, there's a part of you that's annoyed by it, but at the same time, it's like, it's on a streaming service. Like, you can just, you don't have to watch all of the 7 minutes of credits. And luckily, they haven't put anything at the end of the credits, like Marvel tends to do. Although I wouldn't be surprised if the last episode, they have, like, an end credits scene for, like, the finale or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're gonna have, like, an hour, and we have at least 3 more hours, roughly 3 more hours of WandaVision, which is kind of funny because when you think of the first 6 episodes being about 20 minutes each, we're gonna get more WandaVision in the last 3 episodes than we did the first 6. So,
crazy.
Yeah, like almost a full hour extra. So, very, very nuts. And they have a lot to wrap up in those 3 hours, so I'm glad that they're doing that way. So the last thing that I want to talk about, which we've kind of talked about this character quite a bit during this review series, but I want to talk about Agnes, or Agatha, or what's Agnes is her character's name, but a lot of people are drawing comparisons to a character named Agnes or Agatha, right? Gosh, the names are too close for me to keep them straight. But so, as I kind of touched on, going over the overview of the episode, when Vision kind of finds her and starts talking to her, one of the things that popped out to me, like, right out the gate, and it kind of goes back to something that I think Julia mentioned in maybe a few episodes back, but when they were kind of, like, getting all of the people of Westview and, like, figuring out who they actually are, and, like, they were putting up their, like, driver's license or whatever, and, like, okay, so the character of, like, Mrs. Hart is played by this lady in real life. Like, they were going through and matching driver's licenses to people that were showing up at the broadcast, so everybody didn't have the same names. Like, Wanda was basically renaming everybody. Well, when Vision took Agnes out of her dream state or whatever, he called her Agnes, like, to her face, and she didn't correct him. So she didn't say like, that's not my name, who is Agnes or whatever. She didn't make any big fuss about it. And I think Julia mentioned a few episodes ago that when they were putting up everybody's like driver's licenses or whatever, Agnes was like the only person that they didn't actually find like a driver's license for.
Mhm.
So she's the only person who doesn't have like a real world like life or name or whatever. So that kind of furthers this conspiracy that Agnes is playing some kind of greater role in all of this. And as Vision's kind of like talking to her and trying to figure out, she says like, "Oh, you're an Avenger," and he's like, "I don't know what an Avenger is." And then she starts saying to him like, "You're dead." Like she keeps repeating it. She repeats it like 3 or 4 times. It just keeps getting like more aggravated and louder the more she says it. She just keeps saying like, "You're dead, you're dead, you're dead." And Vision's like, he doesn't know what to think of all this because he's already figuring out that something's not right with everything around me. But now the one person who is probably the most trustworthy person outside of Wanda is like losing her mind and shouting at him. And up to this point, I'd say that Vision can't remember anything past coming to Westview, but it probably never even occurred to him that he's not real, like in a sense. So there's a lot to unpack here, and Agnes kind of goes nuts and starts just like cackling after that. And I can't remember if there was any other like key information that she gave, but Vision kind of puts her back in the trance, and she just kind of like pops a Yui and leaves. So pretty.
What's crazy is that she's right next to the barrier whenever he's talking to her as well.
Yeah.
So, and he was on his way to the barrier. He stopped in like that cul-de-sac, and he was like trying to talk to people, and none of them would respond or even acknowledge that he was there.
Yeah.
But Agnes was still able to acknowledge he was like, she was still able to talk and acknowledge he was there even before coming out of her trance. Like,
yeah,
she was still able to like function and get out there that far. So I don't know who or what Agnes is, but she's definitely not from Westview. She definitely has some sort of powers that she's able. I think she has like resisted Wanda for this long, but it's kind of over the course of it, it's kind of broke her down to where she's no longer able to resist Wanda.
Yeah. Because we've talked about, I think we talked last week about how Agatha Harkness was like her role. She kind of she was tied pretty closely to Wanda. Julia, I think you probably, I think you know more about Agatha than any of us, but like she was like also kind of like a witch, right? Like she had magical powers or whatever, and lo and behold, Agnes's Halloween costume is a witch. So it's so heavy-handed at this point. Like these little things early on are cute, but then it's like it seems like the further the show goes, the more they're really just kind of like hitting you over the head with like, hey, this person is actually this person, or this is a reference to this, and that seems pretty evident. So it makes you wonder what role she played prior to Westview and Wanda kind of going off the deep end, because there's still like a critical section of time that I want to know about, and that's like the time between Tony Stark's funeral and the time that Wanda goes and gets Vision's body out of the sword base. So there's like, so something had to happen in that chunk of time, and I feel like Agnes or Agatha or whatever her real name is, I feel like she's gonna fit into that time frame somehow, because like why else would she be here in Westview? So like unless she tried to like infiltrate and manipulate Wanda, but Wanda was too powerful for her. I don't know. It's still so fuzzy, but I would love to see some more. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I would love to see more flashbacks. I need usually I'm not that big on kind of backpedaling, especially when you drop so many crucial plot points that need to be expanded on. I don't like for those to just be hanging there and then you take a week off essentially and go back and tell a story from the past. But I kind of need that right now because we still don't know what full on triggered Wanda into starting like all of this. And I feel like that's of high importance, especially if it involves, Mephisto or Agnes or Agatha or whoever or Ultron or whatever.
Yeah.
There's got to be something bigger going on, and I kind of need that explained. And I would love for next week's episode to at least explain it a little bit because I'm starting to lose my mind here. Much like Wanda, I'm going crazy trying to figure out just what the heck's going on, and I think that's good because that's good television. And if this is kind of like if this is a precursor for what all the other Disney Plus shows are going to be like, I'm extraordinarily excited, and I can't wait for more.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to get through the next 3 weeks without losing my mind.
If the other shows are of this high quality and have this much stakes and, universe-changing stuff, then I'm okay if we get less Marvel movies and more Disney Plus shows. Because I like this being able to have it fleshed out a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. Because like the long format of a TV show, kind of what I touched on earlier, it kind of helps you like build out your universe a little bit more, a piece at a time. I mean, because when you think about how long it took to get to like just the Avengers,
Right.
when you think about how many movies came out and the groundwork that they had to lay just to have that one movie come out and be as successful as it was, like we're in uncharted territory here because now it's like, well, we have a pre-established universe, but we just can't like throw things in like willy-nilly. Like there has to be a rhyme and a reason to it because they've kind of established like a law and order to things now. I would say, like the universe has like laws, especially after Infinity War and Endgame with time travel. Like they're really setting like the bounds and limits of their universe. So now they have to work everything into all that, and it's probably a lot easier to do that over like a 6 or 9 episode like series as opposed to like 5 or 6 2.5 hour movies that have to focus specifically on certain characters. And, with only 2.5 hours, you can't have like 3 or 4 branching storylines, kind of like the way WandaVision does. You know, so yeah, if this is the future of Marvel, and it's more Disney Plus programming and less like, featured films, I'm okay with that because I think that would make the featured films more like special.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're going to have like a healthy blend of shows and movies because one, when Disney released like their quarterly thing not too long ago, they basically talked about how they were losing a ton of money from Disney Plus. Like it was whenever they were talking about Mandalorian, but still, like they were losing, like Disney's losing a ton of money from Disney Plus right now, and just because like they don't want to drive up prices or anything. But I think if they're going to do more Disney Plus stuff, they have to have the Marvel movies in theaters to keep it going, because they're not. I don't think they're ever going to make back the money they put. If they put this much quality like they do in WandaVision into more of their shows, they're not going to make back that money through Disney Plus, anyways. Because one $7 or $8 subscription goes for 2 to 4 people. It goes for a family. So instead of your movie sales of getting that per person. So
yeah, it's they're definitely streaming services are kind of in some sense they're a bit of a gamble for companies to kind of just make their own, because it's like when you look at things like one of the most recent developments in like the world of streaming is the WWE network launched like I want to say it was almost 10 years ago now, and it was they haven't, as far as I know, they haven't raised their prices, and if they have, it hasn't been by much, and it's only like $10 a month. Well, when you think about $10 a month and getting like pay-per-view events every month for $10, a pay-per-view event will cost you anywhere, if you go through like DirecTV or any other like cable provider or satellite provider, you're looking at anywhere between like $50 to $75 for a pay-per-view buy. So when you compare the amount of money that you make off of the pay-per-view buys and how much you make off of releasing stuff, on your streaming service, your premium content for, dirt cheap prices, it makes you wonder how, how are you going to make that money back? And the idea is that you get more subscribers essentially than you would originally get people like doing the pay-per-view buys, or in this sense, like going to the movies. So, you would want to see at least like an increase, like say like a 25 or 50% increase of the number of people that were consuming the high quality product, consuming the lower quality products. So the idea is to grow your fan base so that you make your money back on a show like WandaVision by having like 3 times as many people subscribing to Disney Plus than you did actually going out and watching the movies.
Yeah.
But I think the problem you have with that is that a lot of people think how many times people go back and rewatch movies. Like I can't tell you how many times I've went back and rewatched like the Star Wars movies, even the ones that I don't like. I've seen them at least 2 or 3 times in theaters.
Yeah.
So when you like throw that ticket price on top of, and you compare that to like Disney Plus, like, I could have spent like upwards of like $25 to $30 watching the same movie like 3 or 4 times, depending on what movie theater I went to, or I just paid $10 to view it as many times as I want on Disney Plus.
Right.
So, it's a big gamble, and it's funny that we're talking about Disney of all people losing money because of like the monopoly that they have on so many different like outlets and media. So I don't think Disney is going to be hurting for money anytime soon, but they either need to like properly balance this out, or they need to. With Disney kind of being like the parent company essentially, I don't know if it benefits them to like partner with pre-established streaming services. Like I know they already have a partnership with Hulu, but it kind of makes you wonder, why isn't Disney Plus just like a Hulu add-on and you can just stream everything through Hulu? Like why spend the money for the infrastructure and everything that you need to run your own streaming service when you could just work with another one? Because that's essentially what the WWE network is doing now with the Peacock. Because in March, all of their stuff is going over to NBC streaming service. So now they don't have to keep up with the infrastructure or any of like the back end stuff. All they do is send all of their like content over to NBC and they handle it all for them. So suddenly like the cost of, upkeep goes way down, and they've already got a deal with NBC. Like Vince McMahon is making like $1 billion or something off of this deal with NBC. So, he doesn't have to worry about losing money on pay-per-view buys or anything like that, because he's made it back with like a larger company kind of, shouldering all of the weight and the responsibility of like making sure that like content goes up on time, and maintaining like servers or whatever, and make sure that people aren't having like laggy connections. He doesn't have to deal with that anymore. But I don't know if there's another company that could do that for Disney. I don't know if there's anybody like above Disney that could offer them that kind of a deal that would make it worth their while and kind of help them, alleviate some of the money loss on putting like cinematic quality TV on their streaming service for like $10.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting back to WandaVision, I was just going through some of the clips, or like a certain clip that I was curious about, and when Wanda's like expanding her hex, it does seem that Vision I didn't notice it whenever I watched it that Vision does get put back together. So it doesn't look like he's dead, because it just showed him on the ground, but he was like fully put back together. But I really wanted to watch that scene because, one, I want to know what's going to happen to Darcy.
Yeah.
Because she gets put into the hex. So is Darcy going to become a mutant?
I hope so, because
I love Darcy.
If anybody deserves powers, it's Darcy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. After all the time she got left behind because Thor was taking what's her name
Jane.
with
Yeah.
Jane. Yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Before we start to end, can we talk about the infomercial real fast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I saw a lot of speculating on that.
I saw one theory from a very credible source, which is TikTok. TikTok. And it was pretty much alluding to the fact that Wanda's powers are her magic is the only thing keeping Vision alive. And you see in the infomercial this kid get given this cup of yogurt and he's trying to open it and he can't open it and then he dies. So it's like he's not getting the magic that he needs. He's not getting the nutrients. Kind of the same way with Vision whenever he leaves Westview. He's not getting Wanda's magic anymore. So he died.
Mm.
Yeah, kind of a big turn from all of the other infomercials, because I think there was a lot of speculation that it was the same man and woman in every infomercial, and people were saying oh, that's Wanda and Pietro's parents or whatever.
But
And
they're gone now.
But now they're not, and now that because the narrative has shifted pretty heavily, because it's no longer happy-go-lucky, everything's okay. Wanda's now in defense mode, and that it makes sense that the infomercials are changing now. And the fact that I mean, when we were watching this episode yesterday, and the kid was trying to open the yogurt, and then he slowly whittles away until he's just a skeleton, we were all this is kind of nuts.
That just got very macabre.
Yeah, it's this is just this took a direction that we were not expecting it to take. And the fact that the yogurt brand is called Yo Magic, it's continuing with the theme of beating you over the head with obvious information this episode did. It's Wanda's subconscious or whatever is controlling the infomercials is telling her the only thing that is keeping you and your family alive is your magic. If you stop using your magic, you will die. And it's that. I mean, this has been the most, if all of the other infomercials were just fun little nods to historical things, then this feels like the first real dynamic shift where it's almost the world itself is telling Wanda what to do instead of the opposite of Wanda controlling everything. Because Pietro in a sense kind of plays a similar role when he keeps saying things to Wanda about him being dead and Wanda controlling the world and Vision. One of the big things that we kind of glossed over just because there was so much in this episode, when Billy runs up to Wanda and says that Dad's in trouble, something's happening to him, Pietro very, very brashly says, don't worry, your dead husband can't die twice. And Wanda goes off on him and just full on magic blasts him into a bunch of tombstones, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah.
That she literally sent him back to the grave. But it's almost like the world around Wanda is telling her everything's coming down around you, and you need to start kicking it up a notch if you want to try and keep everything that you've worked so hard to bring together. If you want to keep it together, you're gonna have to do something pretty serious. And I think eventually engulfing the world in her hex is probably where that's gonna lead to.
Yeah, and how you were saying her magic is keeping her and her family together. Something that Darcy touched on was, she said whenever the director Hayward was hey, he's trying to start a war, and she's Monica was we don't know, she's the catalyst for this, we don't know what's going to happen if she dies, if she disappears. We don't know what's going to happen to the people. So that's another big thing is if Wanda dies or something, what happens to all the people in Westview?
Yeah, because I think the initial thought is just you kill the power source and everything else shuts down, but it's well, is this unplugging a toaster from the wall, or is this cutting off power to a nuclear facility?
Right.
What's it gonna be? Is it gonna be that everything's just gonna shut down and turn off and everything's gonna be okay, or everything is gonna go nuclear and the world's gonna end? So there's there's just so much to this show. I gotta admit, kind of in closing, this show is defying all expectations for me because I was not expecting. I was expecting it to be decent at best. Because when I saw the original trailers for it and like all of the real like goofy sitcom stuff, I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. I was like, but I feel like this is gonna get old like pretty quick, and they've been able to really kind of keep it alive because the longer it goes, they still do the sitcom stuff, but it's like more of the facade is kind of like being pulled back, and that really keeps you interested. And the whole like mystery aspect of this show is really what's like keeping me going. Like I know some people who are just in this show because of all of the old timey like sitcom jokes, but for me, like the underlying mystery is what's keeping me coming back every week to watch more and to figure out more, because there's just so many gosh dang layers to this that I feel like you're going to be asking questions up until like the last 10 minutes of the last episode.
Mhm.
And as annoying as that is, it's going to keep me coming back.
Oh yes.
Yeah, cause I don't know if you remember, but like after the second episode, I still wasn't on board with this show. So,
Yeah.
But now, the mystery has ramped up times 1,000. So it's got me actually looking forward to Fridays to watch WandaVision. So
Yeah, 100%.
In my book, is definitely went up since the just sitcom jokes in the first 2 episodes.
And depending on how these next 3 episodes go, this could easily become top tier Marvel content right here.
Oh yeah.
Now
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, wow, really good. I love it, but this has a lot more potential to go up. So.
I mean, for me, it's already over a couple of the movies, but
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Look at you, Thor: The Dark World.
That's exactly the same one that I was thinking of too.
yeah, I
It's
think
like
we were all thinking that.
I mean, that's
Dark
kind of like
World,
bottom.
Yeah, it's like
it's pretty far down there, but
Yeah, like I'm just glad that we're finally getting solely Wanda content, just because I don't think that a lot of people realized. I mean, they may have known that she was powerful, but now we actually get to see in action how powerful she actually is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was very excited to like pre like Disney Plus whenever they were announcing shows. I was really excited whenever they teased the concept of having a Wanda show. And I'm so glad that we are here today.
Yep. She's such a cool character, and it's like it just felt like up till this point she was just kind of like, I don't want to say like an afterthought, but just kind of like a side character, like, and she didn't really play a big role, or at least not as big of a role as she should be playing. And now I think she is, and I would love to see her kind of be a mainstay and like a front runner in the Marvel universe, like moving forward. Like, if the OG4 were kind of like that's 3, the OG4 were kind of like the Cap, Iron Man, Thor, and Hulk. If these were like the 4 main like driving force characters, I would love to see like Wanda taking up the mantle as one of like the big players in the Marvel universe going forward, because she's a great character and this show is great, and how could you not want more?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's gonna wrap us up. I'd say we're probably over time by just a little bit, if I had to guess. So we're gonna call it quits here. We'll see you all next week for episode 7. Expect a longer episode if there's going to be an hour worth of content. So, and we'll see y'all next time. Have a great day. Bye.
Have a good one.
Later.
Like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff.
Oh, and by the way, if you've made it this far, comment down below your favorite moment from the show, because we need more comments.
Yes.
And if you made it this far, bravo for you. So,
Yeah.
Yep. Bye, everybody.
bye.